So looking at an inferior view of a real skull here, firstly we can see foramen magnum. Just anterior and lateral to that, we've got the occipital condyles. So of course the spinal cord will come through the foramen magnum, and C1 will articulate here at the occipital condyles. Now if we keep going anterior and lateral from the condyles, we'll hit this fairly circular hole here, which is the opening of the carotid canal. Now that is actually a tunnel, so we can't really see where it's going from here. It actually goes medially and anteriorly from here, the tunnel, so that's the carotid canal. Now just behind that, just posterior to the carotid canal, and visible if we tilt the skull this way, we can see the irregular shaped jugular foramen. Now it's much bigger than the carotid canal. What goes through the carotid canal first? The internal carotid artery, brilliant, so supplying blood to the brain. What's coming through the jugular foramen? The internal jugular vein, yeah, or at least that's what it becomes after it's gone through the foramen. And we'll have a look at which structure, what it's called, when it's in the skull later on. So carotid canal, anterior, jugular foramen, just behind it there. Alright, then we have a mandibular fossa. Now at the moment the mandible is in place on this skull, so we're just going to gently dislocate the temporomandibular joint on that side. Now we can see the mandibular fossa there. So there's a little depression there that the head of the condyloid process, so the mandible there, is going to sit in. That's the mandibular fossa. And then we have an incisive fossa, and the incisive fossa is at the front or anterior aspect of the hard palate. Here's the incisive fossa here, just between the incisors, the superior incisors. And then, just at the posterior extent of the palate, we've got these plates here, either side. So we've got medial pterygoid plates here, and then the one just lateral to that will be the lateral pterygoid plate. So medial here and here, and then lateral pterygoid plates here and here. Now they're part of the sphenoid bone. And then we have a couple of foramina that we can see that we haven't looked at yet. Here we've got an oval shaped one, that's foramen ovale. At the lateral extent of that, then we have a small one called foramen spinosum. And then back at towards the midline here we have a large foramen, that's foramen lacerum. So we've got ovale, spinosum, lacerum. And then in between the styloid process and the mastoid process, we have an aptly named stylomastoid foramen. So hopefully if you see that one pinned, you can just work out the name anyway. It's in between the mastoid process and the styloid process, stylomastoid foramen. And then lastly, if we come back to look, and I just want to get the best angle we can, that's not bad, zoom in, at the inferior end of the medial pterygoid plate. So we're zooming right in here on the pterygoid plates. So we've got a, oh wow, it's a good view of the styloid process though, that's pretty cool. So here we've got a lateral pterygoid plate and then a medial pterygoid plate. At the inferior end of the medial pterygoid plate, which is just here, we've got a little hook, and that's called hamulus. So remember the hamate bone has a hook on it, so hamulus means hook, so that's what we've got there.